1 year ago tonight, a deadly encounter between an officer and a black man changed the world forever.
On the day that marks George Floyd's death, Minnesotans celebrated his life with events around Minneapolis and beyond. We have team coverage on Floyd's impact from here at home all the way to the nation's capital. We begin with WCCO's Jennifer Mayerle, who spent the evening at the intersection where Floyd spent his final moments. Jennifer?
And there was a collective sense of community today, a collective feeling of togetherness and purpose. George Floyd's life brought everyone to that spot. And tonight at 38th in Chicago, a remembrance. People placed candles around the intersection and they honored the life of George Floyd, illuminating the square. And throughout the day, people paid their respects to Floyd through words, art, and celebration.
We wanted to bring joy, and this is our offering of joy.
Their music filled George Floyd Square so people could listen and dance and remember. Butchie Austin lives in the neighborhood.
We feel like we're doing this all in his honor. This is, he died unjustly, and this is what we want to celebrate him and do this with community.
Tell me what community looks like. This is what community looks like.
The community came together at the intersection where Floyd took his last breath 1 year ago, a place that gripped the nation and became known around the world, a space that continues to hold deep meaning.
Being a part of the movement is why we're here.
Mesfin Negia brought his 3 kids to the square, just like he did last May.
George Floyd means change for me and also for my kids' future.
Even though his death was not justified at all, he did change the world a lot.
A sentiment shared by so many.
I feel like he's broken some barriers. I describe it as family. We're all talking, we're all different cultures are here.
With a promise to continue the work.
We have achieved something, and we have to do more.
And while the anniversary is mostly celebratory,
today's real emotional for me.
What's behind why they're here on this day carries a lot of weight.
George Floyd, to me, could be any one of us, and that's why I'm so proud, because I just feel good that my city really stood up and did a lot of things that's never happened across this nation.
And 1 year later, people tell me they'll continue to say his name, calling George Floyd Square and what happened there the epicenter of change. And tonight saying what brought them there, remembering the man that brought us all to this point. Frank.
Okay, Jen, thank you.
George Floyd's murder prompted almost immediate changes. Last summer, the Minnesota legislature banned police chokeholds, made it law for officers to intervene, and required more mental health training. Lawmakers will discuss more measures when they meet during a special session next month. But changes on paper aren't always felt at home. WCCO's Erin Hassanzadeh spoke with Minnesotans about where we are now 1 year after Floyd's death. Erin?
Yeah, Amelia, I'm here along the 35W bridge, a local symbol for a global movement that started here a year ago. And so we took today to ask people to reflect on what has changed since George Floyd's death and what they'd still like to see in the future.
This last summer, I will never forget.
At Chicago and Lake in Minneapolis, not 10 blocks from where George Floyd was murdered.
I think it's the voice of people that actually convicted children.
Samuel Errol Phillips and Mac the Barber are here to offer a free haircut and a space to reflect.
I feel like 2020 was people understanding finally what systemic racism is. It's not a person, it's this whole system.
The thing with change and equity is that it's often intangible. You can't necessarily see it.
I'm excited that we finally are reaching some of these milestones, but I'm also frustrated that, in 2021, this is what we're getting excited about.
While the buds of change show promise of blossoming, there's a lot to weed through before we can realize it.
Our communities are experiencing collective trauma.
We're making leaps and bounds, but racism is never going to go quietly into the night. It's going to keep morphing.
We're still in the process, I feel like. There's still things to be done. We don't want the same thing to happen to someone else,
Some things still need to change.
I would love to see the black homeownership rate, be comparable to that of whites. I would love to see the achievement gap be basically non-existent.
Better policing, better law enforcement,
But there's a thread here that connects people.
Yeah, definitely, I have hope.
It was difficult, but it wasn't all bad.
Love each other, you know? That's the way I see it nowadays.
I think we learned how to hold each other and be together, and I don't think in my lifetime we're done seeing unrest.
It's the thread that could help us all realize a better place to live.
Without struggle, there's no progress.
It really does get more uncomfortable before it gets easier.
We already know the solutions, we just need to use them.
And a lot of the people we talked to today say they feel like their communities got a little bit closer. Samuel told me he now knows his neighbors because they kept watch together over the summer. Another thing we heard today is that a lot of people think the solutions will come from us, not from elected officials.
All right, Erin, thank you. President Joe Biden set today as a deadline for Congress to pass police reform nationwide, but that didn't happen.
Members of the Floyd family met with the president at the White House today. WCCO's Caroline Cummings was there and shares the family's message from D.C.
In an hour-long meeting here at the White House, George Floyd's family says President Biden heard their concerns and promised a police reform bill in George Floyd's name will pass Congress, even though it will come past the deadline the president hoped for before the one-year anniversary. They lost their uncle, brother, and father.
We're just thankful for what's going on, and we just want this George Floyd Policing Act to be passed.
That bill, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, passed the Democrat-controlled House in March, but has since stalled in the Senate. Some of its provisions include making it easier to prosecute officers accused of misconduct, ending use of chokeholds, banning no-knock warrants in federal drug cases, and creating a national registry to track police misconduct. Key lawmakers who also met with the Floyd family Tuesday say they're working out a deal to get Republicans on board.
I'm hopeful that sometime after Memorial Day we'll have an agreement.
Say his name.
George Floyd.
While the world continues to reel from the tragedy 1 year later, those in the room at the White House say the family's meeting was still a bright spot, especially for Gianna, Floyd's young daughter.
The president actually interacted and played with Gianna. She had an absolute ball. And that's why this may be a sad day across the country, but this was a super happy day. Seeing her smile like she's still smiling.
As Congress and President Biden here in Washington work out a deal over the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act back in Minnesota, where it all began, lawmakers in St. Paul are working on their own deal for police reform, too. At the White House, Caroline Cummings, WCCO 4 News.
George Floyd's girlfriend says she hopes that every heart mends from what happened last year. Courtney Ross joined residents and staff at the Salvation Army Harbor Light Center in Minneapolis today to honor Floyd. He worked there as a security guard. Ross says it is a place that helped him realize his life had meaning. The love she witnessed today brought her to tears.
It's still like a dream and a nightmare all in one. A dream because all this change and all these wonderful people support him. A nightmare for me because I miss him every day. Like I don't know if that will ever go away.
The center says they honor Floyd every day through their work serving Minnesotans that are experiencing homelessness.
The 17-year-old girl who recorded the cell phone video of Floyd's murder says that she still holds the trauma of what she witnessed. Darnella Frazier is 18 now. Her video gave the world a shocking up-close view of what happened the night Floyd died. She's been honored for taking action, but says it has taken a major toll on her well-being and her family. In a statement today, she said she's proud of what she did, but added, behind this smile, behind these awards, behind the publicity, I'm a girl trying to heal from something I am reminded of every day. And you can read her full statement on WCCO.com.
Some who gathered at George Floyd Square this morning had to run from gunfire.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
That was a news crew doing a live report at 10 a.m. Witnesses heard dozens of shots and saw a car speed off. Minneapolis police say one shooting victim did show up at the hospital, but is expected to survive. The ex-Minneapolis officer who murdered George Floyd will learn his fate in 1 month.
A jury convicted Derek Chauvin last month. His sentencing is scheduled for June 25th. Chauvin faces up to 40 years in prison, but the Justice Department could put him away even longer. Chauvin and the 3 other former officers involved in George Floyd's death could face life in prison if they're convicted of violating Floyd's civil rights. That federal investigation pushed back the Minnesota trial for Tou Thao, Thomas Lane, and J. Alexander King. It is now scheduled for next year.